The suspect in Colorado's tragic shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub, Club Q, evaded the state's gun laws despite having allegedly threatened his mother with a homemade bomb a year ago. Anderson Lee Aldrich's past was all the more mysterious due to a name change when the suspect was 16 years old. Before then, he was known as Nicholas Brink. This is according to the Washington Post. While we don't yet know exactly how this name change impacted how his public records were handled, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich was not formally charged in last year's incident. And because the case was dismissed, his records were sealed.
His previous warning signs have many people asking how this was able to happen, because under Colorado's red flag law, Aldrich's firearms can be temporarily seized if a person is deemed a risk. Advisor at the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce and public policy advocate Jonathan Lovitz joins us now to discuss. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, and good morning. I'm sorry, wish it was on better circumstances, but it's good to be with you.
Yes, good to have you with us. Obviously, a terrible tragedy, which we discussed earlier in the show. You know what went on in the actual incident, the bravery of the individual who actually confronted and stopped the shooter in the way that is supposed to happen in these scenarios. We're supposed to be able to rely on police to do that, and we've often been disappointed by the police response in other mass shootings. But we want to talk a little bit about why this red flag law did not come into play. So many times it seems you have a mass shooting incident. This was true in Parkland. This was true of even some of the more recent shootings, that the individual is known to law enforcement and had a interaction with law enforcement that should have, flagged this person for in this case, I think, for arrest. He threatened his mother with a bomb. So what do you make of all this?
The attack is heinous and horrific and has shaken all of us to our core once again. But to your point, it also has raised the consciousness around what we can do to make things better, including strengthening these red flag laws, making sure people who have no business having guns or access to dangerous materials have that ability. I think we can expect some action from Governor Polis, the Attorney General in Colorado, and others. This is a hate crime, whether you call it that or not, because an attack on LGBTQ people of any kind is a hate crime. And should be prosecuted to the fullest extent. But we've got to zoom out from just the red flag laws affecting those who are directly involved in a shooting like this, and look about how we need to red flag some of the speech and rhetoric that has made this possible. There is a clear and direct line to the kind of hateful speech that existed from the likes of a Lauren Boebert, who had the audacity, the gall, to tweet about her thoughts and prayers for the community just days after she tweeted about how we are once again groomers and how trans people are dangerous to America. The red flags need to extend all the way to the lawmakers who are enraging the community with this kind of disgusting and unnecessary rhetoric. These are fellow Americans. And this was an attack on what we all call a safe space for the LGBT community. But you know what? Every space in America is supposed to be a safe place. And LGBTQ people should not have to hide, and in fact are only going to shine brighter and be more vocal about their visibility to push back on this kind of horrible attack.
So we just showed one of the tweets on the screen. AOC had tweeted, "Lauren Boebert, you have played a major role in elevating anti-LGBT hate rhetoric and anti-trans lies while spending your time in Congress blocking even the most common sense gun safety laws. You don't get to thoughts and prayers your way out of this." And I don't know if we also have some of the tweets that are being referenced to from Lauren Boebert. She's tweeted in the past, for example, take your children to church, not drag bars. What do you say to people who might say, well, we saw what happened in Pulse, that ultimately wasn't the shooter wasn't motivated to go there because he knew in advance it was a gay bar. It's premature to talk about the motives here. I mean, what is your response to folks who say that the left is prematurely weighing in on fault here?
That's a lie. It is a absolute and blatant attack on LGBTQ people. We don't need to wait for motives. You know by what that bar is, what the flags are outside. And let's also be very clear about what this means in terms of the response that's needed, not just from queer people, but from everyone. LGBTQ people are women. We are people of color. We are veterans. We are immigrants. We have disabilities. There is no such thing as an attack on LGBTQ people that is not an attack on everyone. And if you don't think they're coming to shoot up our bars and attack our marriages on a Monday and not coming for your voting rights on a Tuesday and her body on a Wednesday, you're out of your mind. This is a coordinated attack on diversity in America. We are here. We are not going anywhere. And to try and instill fear in our community and in every community just simply isn't going to work. Allyship is a verb, and people are getting ready to roll their sleeves up and work as allies to protect queer people and all people in America because of those who are attempting to whitewash this as just an accident or just a shameful attack due to someone's mental health. That's not the case.
I mean, I think many people will find it, or some people at least will find it, pretty provocative to kind of blame Boebert or point to her as being responsible so prominently. I don't know if this individual saw any tweets from Boebert or anyone like that. In the same way, it's now kind of perceived to have been a mistake to blame, the Sarah Palin targeting map for Jared Loughner shooting Gabby Giffords and so on and so forth. And as Brianna brought up the Pulse example, which was very prejudged, which is not to say any of this is horrible regardless of the motive or regardless of who is targeted, but on such a political issue. But you don't seem to have much pause about going there.
No, hate speech is hate speech, whether you tweet it, whether you put it on a T-shirt, whether you put it on a red hat. Hate speech is hate speech, period. And an attack on one is an attack on all communities. And you don't have to incite people to violence. You have to let them know that they are welcome to fear and hate their neighbor. All of this concern about, not sending your kids to a drag story hour. Well, the thing kids have to be most afraid of at going to see a drag queen read a storybook is an armed Christian with a gun.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there is definitely a kind of language that Lauren Boebert has engaged in where people are described as groomers for being members of the LGBT community or going to a drag club. And those kinds of environments are described not just as something they personally don't like or something that they wouldn't take their children to, but something more akin to sexual predation. And I do think that opening the door to that kind of language, if you genuinely believed that people were engaging in sex acts with children, then that gets to a place where you might feel like it's justified to act violently. And we saw some of this rhetoric coming out of the abortion movement at a certain time, when if you use rhetoric that says, abortion is murder, then maybe there is a connection to people who then just turn around and decide to murder abortion doctors, abortion providers, because you think it's an eye for eye and there's something kind of that's like a cyclical justice in it all. But I think what Arabi is asking is, knowing what we know about Pulse, I guess I'm curious, what do we know about the stated motive so far of the shooter? I saw that Joe Biden, for instance, in an initial tweet had kind of sidestepped the idea of blame, saying that we're still trying to figure out what motivated him. And then going on, obviously, to offer his apologies. And I saw people pushing back against that. Do we have any evidence, the way that has come out in other shootings over time, about what kind of things this person was reading, what kind of politics this person had, what was potentially provoking him to attack this particular spot?
Well, they talk about terrorism being homegrown. This was literally grown in the home. This individual's uncle is a red hat, MAGA-wearing member of the Colorado legislature. So we know where these ideas come from. And that is often the heart of the problem, is the fact that there aren't people willing to speak up and defend those under attack at the home. This is going to be a very real conversation for a lot of people going into the Thanksgiving holidays. Do they feel safe at their own dinner table, let alone going back back to their hometown. And these are very real concerns right now. So we are going to learn more about the shooter's motives, but we also are going to learn a lot more about community responses, both positive and negative. The area around Colorado Springs, if you look at research from the Southern Poverty Law Center and others, indicates that there are it is a huge heat map of hate-related rhetoric and violence in that area, that there are multiple hate groups on record in that region. This is a growing, festering problem in America, as we know. And again, it's not just against queer people. It's against trans people, people of color, Asian Americans, those with disabilities. This is something that is a dying gasp of those afraid of seeing America change and accept the diversity all around us.
Igor Volsky, executive director of Guns Down America, called on lawmakers to pass an assault weapons ban as part of the Respect for Marriage Act. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul is ramping up police support. Sunday, she tweeted, amid recent threats to Jewish and LGBTQ communities, I have directed police to increase support for communities that are potential targets of hate crimes. Here in New York, violence or bigotry will never be tolerated. So what policy response would you like to see to instances like this?
There is not only is there a tremendous policy responsibility on lawmakers right now to ensure that we are putting enough public safety officers in visible places where they can protect the community, but also this is a moment for true allyship to all those corporations who are seeking the LGBT community's dollar every year by representing us at Pride and in advertising all year long. We need you to step up and be active allies in the fight right now by endowing local communities that you support with the funds and resources to put up more lights, more cameras, more security officers, and tempering the fact that we need to be safe and secure in these places, but also not arm them to the teeth. We're probably going to have to return to a time like we did after polls where backpacks are limited, where we might have to do pat downs. We hope that that is not forever, but we've got to do what we've got to do to keep our community safe. And it is up to allies. And I'm glad you brought up the New York example, because while this is happening in Colorado, New York City, one of the great bastions for LGBTQ inclusivity in America, is dealing with multiple attacks on queer people there, as well as a brick being thrown through the window of a bar in Hell's Kitchen, one of the great neighborhoods in America. So this can happen literally anywhere. And so we need allies to step up and stand shoulder to shoulder with us, both on a political and policy level, but on a practical boots on the ground, looking out for each other level as well.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I know that some people are concerned about the civil liberties implications of expanding their surveillance state the way that Hochul is advocating in New York. But I'm sure that we can continue to talk about that as those policies are rolled out and to see whether or not they have a double-edged sword aspect to their implementation. Thank you again, Jonathan, for joining us today.
Thank you all.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.